So within special operations, right, we recognize that the mission doesn't wait. Every solution starts with a non-negotiable, which is cyber and security is never sacrificed for speed. And because it doesn't really matter if the data moves, if it can't reach the operator who needs it most and actually can't be trusted. So I guess philosophically, we believe that compromised intelligence is not intelligence at all.
Hello and welcome to the McHale Report Podcast, SOF Week Show Daily edition. My name is John McHale, Group Editorial Director of the official SOF Week Show Daily and Military Embedded Systems Magazine, and I'm also host for today's podcast. Our guest today is Peter O'Donoghue, CTO of Tyto Athene, and today we're going to cover secure networking and AI tech and how it applies to the special operations community. So let's get started. Peter, welcome. Can you please tell our audience a little bit about your responsibility with Tyto Athene and your experience in the defense industry?
Sure, John. So I'm CTO here for Tyto. I've been here for over 3 years. And actually, Tyto has a very strong focus on Department of War and the intel community, and particularly the expeditionary forces. And in the last year, we're held by Arlington Capital, which is a PE firm, and we've had a leadership sponsor us and really go all in into applying innovation. So in the last year, we've stood up what we call our TALON lab, which is really intended to be an intentional space and concept by which we collaborate with mission customers, with warfighters, with a real eye on understanding how do we harness the eye-watering technology and the amazing capabilities within AI and modern computing and modern technology to be able to solve mission problems. So in the last year, we've, the Talon Lab concept, heavy focus on standing up a team of builders, because we're not looking to build out artifacts and pretty websites. This heavy focus on intentional collaboration, which I think is going to be a topic today, because frankly, a piece of technology that actually doesn't work in solving the mission problem is not really a solution at all. Making sure that we have the right data centers and the right iron and the GPUs and the place where we can actually solve problems with our customers, and frankly, more importantly, a bias for action. I mean, that's fundamentally what we're looking to do here at Tyto Athene within our Talon Lab concept.
So, and part of while we're here, as I mentioned earlier when I intro, and Tyto Athene is going to be exhibiting at the show, is a preview of the technology that's going to be showcased at SOF Week 2026 in Tampa, the week of May 18th through 21st. So I want to start off by talking about that community. Why is special operations community so important to Tyto Athene?
Well, a fewfold, right? First of all, if you're going to build a set of solutions, you kind of want to start with the most challenging problem set. And you want to prove that it's actually going to work there. And particularly, like when we look at the customers that exist and are going to be at SOF Week, you also want to start with the most impactful solutions too, right? So historically, Tyto, we've actually had a very strong focus both at the enterprise and also at the mission edge, and we're looking at our participation in SOF Week to actually kind of have greater focus in what and the special and unique considerations in supporting the mission edge kind of use cases, right? So if you think of U.S. SOCOM's acquisition priorities, which would include resilient C5 ISRT architectures for contested multi-domain environments, the use of artificial intelligence and machine learning to accelerate decision making, and the ability to operate in GPS degraded environments. I mean, what a great place to start, right? So if you can design, build, improve out your technology to work in that context, that's really where we want to go. And actually, our portfolio really spans that. We've got a long history in protecting networks in cyber operations, but a long history also in mission networking as well. And we're really doubling down right now on AI from an autonomous cyber perspective, and also AI to deliver autonomous networking behaviors as well. So that's really why we're so interested in SOF Week and this special operations community, and we're making good progress, I think, so far.
Well, you mentioned degraded environments, and the soft community likes to talk about how they are the tip of the spear. So they're often behind enemy lines. And one of the big challenges they have is secure comms. So what are the technology challenges? I know that's an area your company, focuses on. What are the tech challenges that they're facing to enable secure networks in those environments where it's hostile and they got to do it on the move?
Sure. Yeah, so so within special operations, right, we recognize that the mission doesn't wait, and actually having to exist in detail is a particularly difficult set of problems, right? Um, and you've also got, a near peer adversary as well that is extremely sophisticated, right? So we look at, every solution starts with, non-negotiable, which is, cyber and security is never sacrificed for speed. And because it doesn't really matter if the data moves, if it can't reach the operator who needs it most and actually can't be trusted. So I guess philosophically, we believe that, compromised intelligence is not intelligence at all. And then you also have to recognize the unique constraints of detail and the availability of transport itself. So considerations are obviously, having to deal with the low swap requirements, and also, the dark arts of designing for radio frequency signature management practices to minimize probabilities of detection and the probabilities of interception as well, or intercept. So these are kind of the design constraints, and actually the solutions. I mean, the primary solution that we're going to be showcasing next week is we refer to it as our cognitive data layer, which is effectively an autonomous networking solution for the mission edge, and there's major components on that. One of the components is and actually they both tie to, and they actually have a specific kind of resonance with solving the real world problem. So one is AutoNet, which is basically kind of an AI orchestration tier that allows for you to register devices and establish mesh networks, recognizing that the challenges in terms of what's actually really happening, managing all the RF signatures, and making sure that, and also driving interoperability. Then the second solution that we're going to be showcasing is what we call our mission data grid, which is really kind of it's a bit of a Swiss Army knife, but the use case that we're looking at in terms of the autonomous networking scenario is how do you understand what feeds are actually going through and are being channeled. So you're actually, in real terms or real time, we're tagging data and we're able to prioritize it. So this way we kind of go after the problem of one solution understands what nodes are available, establishes a mesh, and actually keeps it up and healthy and running, drives interoperability. And then the other is kind of an intelligence layer, which is of all the data that could be transported across this network, what is the data that's actually it's most important for mission advantage, for information advantage. So we have a way to actually be able to tag data so that you can push and pull the priority data across your network.
That's interesting because that basically you're filtering the data so the operator can make a more effective decision, actionable intelligence, that kind of thing.
Right. Exactly
so how are you
right.
leveraging AI for that? Do you need AI? Is AI being one of the tools you use to kind of filter that data? Are you leveraging that at all? Because that's a lot of compute power too, I would think.
Well, the compute power is really in the training, right? Like by the time it's actually deployed at the edge, it can be deployed pretty small swap implementations. And actually, that's again what we'll be showcasing, right? AI is, if you think of all of the different permutations and all of the things that need to be done in terms of sensing what's going across your network, what's actually available, being able to determine what the best course of action is in terms of transport availability, and how to design for resilience, and bringing network nodes back up so you can actually get the data motion that you need. That's what the AutoNet solution is. So it's absolutely, I mean, it's basically an AI-powered autonomy layer over network nodes that exist in the mission edge. And then the mission data grid, what I like about the mission data grid solution is it kind of works a little bit like your human brain does, right? Which is to be, if you think about it, you're always there's always sensory, information coming at you all the time. But based on context and based on what you're actually thinking about or what goal you're trying to accomplish, you actually inherently bias what information you're promising to make the best mission outcome, right? So we're using AI to do the tagging based on the context. And actually, we basically are looking at, what's actually going on in real time. What do we think is actually happening in terms of an adversary, and what data in context is actually the most important to get across the network for mission advantage. That's what they do. But you're exactly right. both are based on this platform of what I call intelligent automation, which is really the use of AI that's been trained at the enterprise, deployed to the edge to be able to make better decisions so that your networks are more resilient and there's decisions made in terms of what data gets priority across that network, that contested network.
Quick question. You talking about the edge. Is the edge where the encounter the enemy, or is it the edge more where the data is collected, where the sensors pick it up? From your perspective at Tyto, where do you guys consider the edge?
I'd say we consider the edge to be where, at least the more difficult scenario that we're looking at is actually where one is encountering the enemy, right? So at that mission edge, at the expeditionary force, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's how we're defining it.
Okay. So one of the things, go ahead, please add to it. Yeah.
I would also say too, it's also to do with a detailed kind of use case, right? So I think being able to move data across an enterprise network is so much simpler, right, than it is to deal with recognizing that there's actual electronic warfare happening, like designed to to thwart like the appropriate communications and secure communication. So that's actually when I talk about the mission edge, that's really what I'm talking about is DDoS in contested environments.
One of the things that's important in the special operations clearly, once again, is the edge of the spear, is the tip of the spear, is because they get to try some of the tech out more directly than some of the other services do. And speeding up acquisition to the warfighter, I know, is a huge priority with this current Department of War leadership. And it's a constant challenge. Tyto Athene has a lab, which I found interesting when I read about it, by the way, called TALON. How do you take commercial tech and make it work in systems that have to be deployed for special operations? Can you share an example? How fast can you turn something around? Can you give us an example of speed? Because that's one of the things you're talking about, speed at the beginning, right? So I think this is interesting, and this is it makes me think of what some of the, SOFWorks, AFWorks, all these different things outside of DoD to get technology more quickly to the warfighter. And you guys are kind of enabling that too. I found that really interesting.
Yeah. So I think that the secret ingredients, right, would be, first of all, we got a team of real builders. So that team of builders is broken into, full stack engineers, AI engineers, but probably one of the key elements is we've got folks who've actually, folks who are going to be attending SOF Week who've actually served in those units. So we're not coming from a place of ivory towerness, right? We've got actually folks who've got real examples and understand that like tech, if it gets wet or if it's going to be compromised or frankly, it doesn't support the actual mission is kind of useless, right? So having that intense focus of I've really used it in the field, having those folks on your agile teams is extremely important. Having the right team of builders, having the right gear, having the bias for action, having the space where you can actually collaborate, in my mind, they're the key elements. We have examples where we went from concept to demo in a field exercise in a matter of 60 days, which actually speaks to, frankly, the talent that we have on the team. It also speaks to the orientation in terms of the mission outcome. And we're able to prove out that tech actually worked and also recognize that where the tech needed to be improved to be able to get those kind of like those road miles on it so you can actually kind of evolve it, right? So that's just one concrete example. And the two components that we're showcasing actually were envisioned that way. So neither of them really existed until December 1 of last year. And by the end of January, they were submitted for field exercises, and middle of February, we were able to get all the data and the field results from an exercise out in California. So we're pretty excited about it, and I think the formula is working.
One of the unique things about from a lot of the companies I've talked to at SOF Week, including some of your colleagues when I met them at FCO West, was the feedback you get from the operators themselves. It really makes a difference. Sometimes the engineers can only do so much, but when you hear from the operators, that's so important. How has that feedback helped you guys design, and can you share any examples or anecdotes from it? If you can, I get it, but just curious.
Well, actually, if you give me a second, I'll have to think about it.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so probably the best example, as we're thinking about, how you can contemplate. I mean, it's really to do with, that soft notion of AI machines will not actually replace people, like that people centricity of it. Mm-hmm. So one of the solutions that we're showcasing is called AutoNet, and a key design decision that we made as we went through the process of what does it take to establish a mesh network, to manage, to augment, to kind of manage the whole life cycle of a mesh network in the edge. First is actually figuring out like how to make the user experience and thinking through the cognitive load, right? So it need to be simple to use and need to work with, the tactical equipment that was actually already developed. We're not building a new device. We're just building a set of, really accessible, intuitive user experiences built into the gear that actually already works there. So we're going to deploy, obviously the gear that we have can work on top of the software. It can work on any existing gear, but also the administrative console and everything you need to be able to deploy, manage, and govern the whole life cycle of a mesh network that's actually being managed and governed by Autonet. All lives inside of your TAC. So that's all available and ready to go. So an understanding like what the real estate requirements were, and also recognizing, if you've got, operators who are actually working in the field, like what is it about, how I need to interact with technology? Because you really don't want to ever be in a position where you've got like too much concentration calories having to be spent. Like the cognitive load is just excessive to be able to actually use a piece of technology to be able to kind of manage your network securely, right? So that's probably one of the better examples is the user experience and user interface that we were able to deploy over top of Autonet so that it can be simple to use and simple to deploy and simple to manage.
You talked about TALON, you talked about some other tech. What are some other solutions you're going to have at the show at SOF Week?
Well, I think, the way I would frame it is this, is it's like we recognize our role in the ecosystem of partners, right? So we're going to have a pretty nifty set of demos running on top of some HP gear. So we're going to have Blackwell chips that are going to run at the edge, and they're going to be deployed across our booth and some partner booths, including IBM. We're also going to be working with IBM, who are deploying their Mars program. So think of this: we're going to like the funnest thing I think we're going to do is we're going to have a set of our, going to have instances of our Autonet nodes that are going to be wired up to cameras, right? So we're effectively going to be establishing a mesh network, and we're going to be, those cameras are going to be looking for a person who's actually wearing a cat in the hat, that red and white stripy thing. So you probably, if you're there, you might notice that there's folks who are kind of wandering around with these silly looking cat in the hat hats. But what we're actually really doing in real life is we have cameras attached to our Autonet nodes. Those in turns are being wired up to our mission data grid, which in turn is being wired up to the IBM Mars program, which is the common operating picture. And what we're really doing is we're basically wanting to make sure that we can demonstrate the resilient network. So we're going to be kind of playing with some of the Autonet nodes and switching them on and off and demonstrating that networks are going to stay up and running and can kind of elegantly recover from real life scenarios. Then over top of that, we're going to have our mission data grid that's going to be it's going to be differentiating between, say, normal camera video feeds, and it'll be looking at, hey, look, I'm actually seeing a cat in the hat, and it'll be piping priority data to the IBM common operating picture, and they're going to be showing it in their booth, and we'll be showing it ours as well. So I'm pretty excited about not only are we building the right tech, but we're building with we think are compelling partners. But we're all kind of existing in this ecosystem. And actually, within Tyto, we look at like we feel like we add value close to the mission edge, but really kind of like solving the networking problems, the cyber problems, and that kind of resilient kind of use cases. And by working with HP for that small swap design, so you can deploy it simply and locally, and also working with IBM, we all get to kind of participate in this kind of this value chain where we kind of do what we're best at and actually solve problems. Again, this it's obviously a kind of a fun solution where we're looking for people wearing kind of red and white hats. But you can obviously see like where this could be deployed in real terms and solving like really really difficult problems. I think that the real problem that we're going after is that there's all of this data being piped continuously, and we've got more sensor data that can actually be streamed, and more sensor data that's actually probably needed for mission advantage. So what it is, the domain that we're looking at is how do we take our network excellence, deploy AI to that, and build resilient networks, and figure out like what data should be prioritized going across those networks so it can achieve mission advantage, right? And that's what we bring to the party. what IBM will bring to the party is having this beautiful operating picture, and you can actually synthesize that data with other decisions that mission commanders need to make. So we're all playing like an important role. We're all kind of existing in a value chain, and we're all being open and applying MOSA standards and recognizing that we as good partners across the domain can actually solve mission problems. And we think that's the way that we're looking to participate going forward. Know your strengths and partner with the best in the business.
Well, most of the modular open systems approach, that's all about being able to be interoperable. And that's kind of what you talked about before, whether you guys put this together. Right. That's a huge driven, we cover that a lot too. So we're asking this of every person we talk to on video. What has you most excited about the show? About SOF Week? What has you most excited about SOF Week? Let me ask you that.
Well, I think actually just, I think our live demo showing the gear, I just kind of went through it, right? The cat in the hat thing. I think that's, I always like to, as a CTO, right? It's easy to kind of get lost in the sauce of technology and what technology can and can't do, and actually what the art of the possible is. But to be able to integrate tech, to work with partners and actually solve mission problems, I think, that sense of fun and kind of the whimsical problem, but being able to show how all these components work together, designing for resilient networks, designing for kind of prioritizing data traffic, and actually looking at a fun use case. I'm so excited about that. But I'm also excited to meet with our mission partners, meet with customers, and understand, frankly, where the SOF community is going, and play a role and add some value. That's really what we're looking to do.
So now it's time, before we wrap up, I got a crystal ball question for you. Looking forward, what disruptive technology or innovation will be a game changer for communication systems and military applications, including special operations? Predict the future, Peter.
Sure. I think there's like three things. Now, we're all kind of like, we're all going to bring in our own experiences and our own lenses to a problem domain. I'm thinking of like two or three kind of things that are going to be important going forward, right? One thing that we're looking at is the mission data grid. That one of the solution components that we're showcasing. You heard me use the term. It's a bit of a Swiss Army knife. We think this thing's got some real steroids, right? So we think that not only can it be the orchestrator of what data moves where, it can also be the orchestrator in terms of like managing workloads and managing entire life cycles of applications and specialized and peculiar applications for the SOF community, right? So there's a lot of legs there, and actually having intelligent kind of routing and orchestration across like higher up the stack, we think is pretty important. I think that the second area, and it's a bit of a, it's probably a little bit obvious, but recognizing the threat posed by, cryptographically relevant quantum computing, and the harvest now, decrypt later. So we think being able to not only manage data packets as it traverses the mission edge, but making sure that every piece of that data is actually locked up and encrypted with quantum resistant algorithms, we think this is pretty important as well. And I think, going back to quantum, the positioning, navigation, and timing problem, I think, the conflict in Ukraine, I think, is showing that that you really need to start thinking through, like in terms of GPS denied and PNT just in general, and looking to integrate sensors and being able to deploy that so that you're not so reliant on GPS signals going forward, to be able to have that emerging quantum capabilities for PNT. We think that's going to be a game changer going forward as well. So they would be my three things. The one is kind of like a bigger version of something that we already have in hand, which is kind of like the Uber orchestration of mission applications. And then the two scenarios about quantum protecting against dealing with the harvest now, decrypt later problem, and also recognize and integrating quantum sensing. We think they're the three big areas that we're looking at right now.
Looks very exciting. I hope you predict the future. We come back here in 3 years and everything is exactly as you predicted it. But that brings us right up to the end of our broadcast for today. Thanks for speaking today, Peter. And to our audience out there, be sure to go to SOF Week, check out booth 3441, which is Tyto Athene's booth, and look for the cat in the hat.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
It might be yours truly as well, John. So we'll never know.
If we had known that, we would have had you wear this for the podcast. But anyway, I look forward to seeing you in Tampa, Peter. I look forward to seeing all of you in Tampa. If you're going to the show, you'll be getting the SOF Week Show Daily in your inbox. So thanks again, and we'll see you in Tampa.